She has matched 47 couples in Seoul. 23 weddings. She attended every one. From the back. In something appropriate. She is the best matchmaker in the city. Possibly the country. And for 4 months, she has been sitting across from a man who came to her with a list. A precise, detailed, impossible list of everything he needed in a partner. She found it in week 3. She has been sending him other women ever since. 12 of them. Because Abina's Sarpong has a rule. The matchmaker does not match herself. Her mother broke this rule once. She gave up the practice. He left anyway. Abina built her entire career on that one lesson. The problem? The man across the desk keeps coming back. After every introduction. After every almost. Asking her to debrief. Saying the same thing each time. The first thing I wanted to do after was tell you about it. She knows what that means. She has known since week 7. She is making Contemeyer stew at 9 o'clock at night about it. Welcome to Afro K Dark Diaries TV. This is the matchmaker's mistake. The woman who knows everyone's heart. Let's find out if she knows her own. Seon Ji-won had tried 3 Korean matchmakers before he came to Abina. He had not told her this in the initial intake meeting. She found it in the referral notes, 2 pages in, and she asked him about it directly because she was always direct. 3 matchmakers in 18 months, she said. What were they missing? He thought about it. He was precise. He did not answer until he had the answer. They were matching me correctly, he said. By all the right criteria. Family background, education, values, temperament. The women they brought were appropriate. Compatible even by most measures. But they were finding me someone to match my life. Not someone to fit. He stopped. He looked at his hands. I don't know how to say the difference. She knew the difference. She had been raised on it. In Fanti, the word for what she was looking for was not the same as the word for compatibility. Compatibility was a technical thing, shared values, shared goals, the logical architecture of 2 lives that could coexist without friction. What her mother had called fitting was something different. It was the specific quality of 2 people who each had a shape that the other completed. Not the same shape. Not matching shapes. Complementary ones. The Fanti grandmother who taught her mother this said it simply. Some people fit together the way 2 hands do when you fold them. No piece is the same, but the fold is whole. The Korean matchmaking tradition Abina had studied before opening her practice was excellent at compatibility. It was not built for fitting. This was not a failure of the tradition. It was a difference in what love was believed to require. And it was the reason Abina's practice had carved out a specific place in Seoul's matchmaking world over 4 years, serving clients who had tried the appropriate routes and found them technically correct and humanly insufficient. Tell me, she said, what it felt like when it was wrong. He looked at the window. Like being handed a solution to a problem I hadn't stated, he said. She wrote this in the red notebook. This was him. This was the precise, specific shape of what he needed. She was very good at her job. All right, she said. Tell me about your marriage. He told her. 8 years. His ex-wife's exit line. I could never reach you. You were always 2 steps ahead. I spent our marriage feeling like I was failing a test I didn't know I was taking. He told her this looking at his hands, and she watched his hands while he talked. Precise hands, controlled, the hands of someone who thought carefully before touching anything. And she wrote in the notebook. He confuses thoroughness with connection. The 2 things are not the same. Help him understand the difference. She would help him. That was what she did. Sarpong and Associates. The and Associates aspirational, it was just her. Had matched 47 couples across 4 years. She was the best in Seoul. She would find him his fitting. She did not yet know that she was already in the room. Her sister Amma called on a Thursday morning, between sessions. ESI, Amma said, her name for Abina since they were small, the kind of name that meant you are specifically mine. The scholarship committee met. Abina put down her coffee. And they are reinstating the GPA requirement this year. Retroactively from January. A pause. My grade in quantitative methods was a B-. That's still passing. The reinstated requirement is a B or above across all core modules. Another pause. ESI, I'm 0.2 points below the threshold. They would pull the scholarship. She ran the numbers in her head immediately, because she always ran the numbers. Without the scholarship, Amma's full fees at the University of Ghana were 11,000 cedis per semester. The conversion at current rates was approximately 600,000 Korean won per semester, on top of her existing contribution. Sarpong and Associates had 3 active client engagements, 2 pending referrals, and a reputation that was currently intact. If the reputation cracked, clients went to the Korean agencies. The Korean agencies were waiting for the reputation to crack. 2 of them had tried to poach her clients directly. She had documentation. Seoul's elite matchmaking world was small and adversarial in the way of small, profitable markets. She had built her position on one thing. Abina Sarpong did not catch feelings. She caught compatibility. The moment that story changed, the referral network would migrate. She could absorb 1 semester. Not indefinitely. The practice was profitable but not insulated against a reputational hit, while also carrying increased family expenses. "I'll handle the shortfall," she said. "But Amma, I need the grade situation resolved, not covered. Can you meet with the module professor?" "I already asked. She said the grade stands, but I can submit supplementary coursework by end of month for a revised assessment." "Do it. I'll look over the work before you submit." "ESI." Amma's voice was the voice of a younger sister who had been watching her older sister manage everything for 20 years and had developed, from this, a very specific kind of love that included the right to call things by their names. "You are allowed to need help sometimes, too." "I'm fine. You called me last week at 9 p.m. to tell me you were making Kontameyer stew. You only make that when something is wrong." "I was hungry." "ESI. I'll handle the grade situation and the fees," Abina said. "You handle the supplementary work." "We're fine." She hung up. She looked at the practice's income projections for the next 6 months. She needed Ji-won's case to close successfully. Not for his sake alone. He was her client, she was committed to the outcome regardless, but a successful placement fee was 400,000 won. That was meaningful against the numbers she had just run. She needed this case to close. She needed it to close with a match, not a referral fee, not a partial engagement, not a client who withdrew. A match. A closed file. A completed engagement. She picked up his case file and opened it to the profile she had built. She needed to find his fitting. She was very good at this. She would find it. She did not yet know that finding it and seeing it clearly were 2 different problems, and she had already solved one of them without realizing. The framed quote on the wall of Abina's office was in Chui. Every client noticed it. Most asked. She always said, "Something my mother used to say about compatibility." This was accurate in the way that partial truths are accurate. The full translation was, "The woman who knows everyone's heart has no time to know her own." Her mother had been a matchmaker in Accra. Not a professional one in the modern sense, but a family institution. The woman who carried the knowledge of who fitted whom. She had been exceptional at it. The house in Abina's childhood was full of couples coming to thank her, photographs of weddings arranged over tea, and the specific knowledge of what 2 people needed from each other that her mother had in her bones. When Abina was 12, her mother applied the fitting to herself for the first time. The man was a client, a recently divorced engineer. Her mother had begun finding a match for him and found herself instead. They married. She gave up the practice. She said that love required full presence, and she could not give him presence while also holding the weight of other people's futures. The marriage failed when Abina was 17. Not dramatically, quietly, completely, in the way of things built on one person's sacrifice when the other person forgets the sacrifice was made. Her father left. Her mother had no practice to return to. Abina came to Seoul at 22 for a graduate degree in interpersonal psychology. She opened Sarpong and Associates at 24. The operating principle she built the practice on was not written on the wall. It lived only in her, precise and load-bearing. The matchmaker does not match herself. Not because she was incapable, she knew she was capable, it was perhaps the one thing she was most capable of, but because her mother had been capable too, and capable was not sufficient protection. The only sufficient protection was the rule. She had kept the rule for 4 years. 47 matches. 23 weddings. She had stood at the back of every one of them in something appropriate, watching couples she had chosen for each other discover, over the course of a wedding day, what she had known before they met. It was deeply satisfying work. She had never examined whether it was sufficient. She began examining it in week 7 of Ji-won's engagement. He had come to her in week 3 with his notes from the second introduction. He kept notes, of course he kept notes, this was entirely in character, and he was describing a moment when the woman he had met had agreed with him about something he had expressed uncertainty about. She agreed, he said, when the correct response was to challenge. Anyone paying attention could see I didn't know if I was right. And why didn't you want her to agree? He looked at her. Because I wanted to know if I was wrong, he said. I wanted someone to tell me if I was wrong. I've spent my life being so far ahead of every conversation that no one ever tells me when I've made a bad turn. He stopped. I need someone who can catch up fast enough to arrive at the correction before I've already committed to it. She wrote in the red notebook. He needs intellectual collision, not intellectual companionship. He needs someone who fights him to the right answer, rather than following him to the wrong one. She wrote this. She looked at what she had written. She thought about the previous 45 minutes of conversation, in which she had challenged 3 of his assertions. Not combatively, just with the directness she brought to everything. And he had responded to each challenge with the specific alert quality she was now describing as a need. She had been describing the thing he needed while demonstrating the thing he needed. For 3 sessions. She put the notebook at the back of the drawer when she got home that evening and made Contamire stew, and went to bed without examining what she had understood. She understood it more clearly each week after that. She simply filed each new understanding in the same drawer. In week 7, he said, I keep thinking about what you said last week. About the difference between fitting and matching. How did you develop that framework? She told him about her grandmother in Cape Coast. The Fandy concept. The fold of 2 hands, each piece different, the fold whole. She told him this with her pen in her hand, not writing, which was unusual. He listened the way he listened to everything she said, with his full attention, not waiting to respond, actually receiving. That's why it didn't work, he said quietly when she finished. With the Korean matchmakers. They were excellent at compatibility. They weren't working with that concept. No. Most Korean matchmaking tradition focuses on the material conditions of a match. Background, education, family. These things matter. But they are not the fitting. And you were trained in this. In the fitting. My mother was. I was raised in it. I built the methodology from it. He was quiet for a moment. The women they brought me were compatible, he said. Yours are, he paused. Yours arrive closer to something I don't have a word for. She looked at her hands, not at him. She said, I'm finding you the fitting. That's the work. She picked up her pen. She made a note in the red notebook that she could not read clearly later because her handwriting was slightly wrong, which was not something that had happened to her since she was 22. She went home and made Contamire stew. She put the notebook in the drawer. She called Amma and talked about the supplementary coursework for an hour. She went to bed. She did not examine what she had understood. The woman across the table from G1 in Introduction 12 was excellent. Abina had spent 2 weeks finding her. Min Soo-yeon, 32, senior architect, educated in Paris and then Tokyo and then Seoul, fluent in 3 languages. She held opinions. She had interests that predated Instagram. She was, by every measurable quality on G1's list, a strong candidate. She was, Abina had noted while preparing the brief, almost precisely compatible on paper. Abina watched from her table across the restaurant. She never sat with her clients during introductions. She needed the outside view to read a table. And she watched G1 be attentive, ask the right questions, do everything that 17 weeks of sessions had taught him to do. He was present. Technically. But she had been reading him for 4 months. She knew the texture of his presence. When he was genuinely there was a specific quality to his attention, a sharpening, a fractional lean, the particular focus of a mind that had found something to engage with. She had seen this in their sessions repeatedly. She had not seen it at 12 introduction tables. She was not seeing it now. He was going through the correct motions with the correct woman, and he was not there. The light was on. Nobody was home. Afterward, he came to her table. He sat. He looked at his hands. She opened the red notebook. Tell me, she said. Nothing was wrong, he said. G1. I don't know. He looked up. When I said something I wasn't certain about, she agreed. Just agreed. That could mean she genuinely agreed. She didn't. I could see she had a counter. She chose not to use it. A pause. You would have used it. You would have asked me why I thought that. You would have made me defend it. He said this the way he said things he had thought about before saying, precisely, not carelessly. A very specific silence settled over the table. Abina's pen was moving. She was writing something. She was not writing what he had just said. I'm your matchmaker, she said. Not your match. I know. I'm not. The quality is real. Someone who pushes back. Someone who arrives at the correction before I've committed to the wrong answer. I need to find someone like that. She nodded. I'll keep looking, she said. She would keep looking. She was very good at her job. She would find someone with these qualities. She had been looking for someone with these qualities for 12 introductions, and the reason she had not found them was not that the qualities were rare. The reason was that she had been sitting across from them every Tuesday and Thursday for 4 months. She knew this. She had known it since week 7. She kept it in the drawer with the notebook and the Contemeyer stew and everything else she was managing without examining. "Is it strange," he said as they were standing to leave, "that the first thing I wanted to do after was tell you about it?" She looked at the table. "You and I have been debriefing for 4 months," she said. "It makes sense that I'm the person you process these things with." "Does it?" he said. She collected her bag. She said she would be in touch about the next introduction. She walked to the Yeonhwidong subway and stood on the platform and thought about what he had said and what it meant that he had said it. And she thought about Amma's scholarship and the practice's reputation and the 23 weddings and the back of rooms and appropriate clothing. She went home. She made Contemeyer stew. She went to bed. She did not examine what she had understood. She spent a week on Introduction 13, and she knew exactly what she was doing while she was doing it. She was looking for a woman with Abina's qualities. Not her face, not her career, the internal architecture. The directness. The willingness to challenge. The specific quality of intellectual collision that G1 had been trying to name for 4 months. She was looking for someone who would fit G1 the way the fantifold worked, 2 different pieces making a whole shape, without being her. Someone who could close the case. Someone who would resolve the problem she had identified in week 7 and been refusing to look at directly since. She found Park Ji-eun, 31. Cultural researcher. Published work on disagreement as a communicative form. She held opinions loudly and challenged readily and had, according to 3 references, the kind of direct engagement that some people found confronting and that Abina recognized, from the inside, as the thing G1's list was describing. She arranged the introduction. She sat at her table across the restaurant. She watched. It went well. By every professional measurement she could apply, it went well. Ji-eun challenged him within 20 minutes, directly, without hedging, on an assertion he had made about urban Korean identity. She watched Ji-won's face do the thing it did when something engaged him. The sharpening, the fractional lean, the alert quality. He pushed back. She held her ground. He reassessed. By the end of the dinner they were both leaning forward and talking with the full presence that he almost never had at the end of introductions. Abina walked home. 45 minutes. Seoul autumn cold. She arrived at her building and realized she had not put her coat on properly at any point. She went upstairs. She sat on the kitchen floor. She identified, with the clinical precision of someone who had studied interpersonal compatibility for 6 years, exactly what was happening inside her chest. It was jealousy. The specific, undeniable, professionally catastrophic variety. She had been jealous on behalf of a client. She had watched Ji-won's face do the engagement thing for another woman and felt the sharp specific thing in her chest that had been building since week 7 and was now no longer possible to keep in the drawer. She sat on the kitchen floor for a long time. Then she stood up and made Contemeyer stew and ate it standing at the counter. Then she went to bed. She did not sleep for approximately 2 hours. She lay in the dark and thought about her mother, the engineer, the practice that was dismantled, the man who did not stay, the apartment when she was 18, the rule that had protected her for 4 years and that was not currently working. Her phone buzzed. Ji-won's message. "Thank you for tonight. She was interesting. Really interesting. Is it strange that the first thing I wanted to do after was call you to tell you about it?" She stared at this for a long time. Then she typed back. "Not strange. That's a good sign. It means you're learning to want to share things with someone you care about. That's the growth." She sent it. She turned the phone face down. She lay in the dark thinking about the practice and Amma and the Korean agencies and the 23 weddings, and she thought about how long she could keep doing this. And then she went to sleep. The second date with Ji-eun went well. The third went well. Ji-won reported each one with the detailed narrative he had learned to use across 4 months of debriefs. She listened to all of it. She said the right things. She watched him grow, genuinely measurably. And she made notes in the red notebook with her handwriting slightly wrong. 6 weeks after Introduction 13, he called to tell her the relationship had stalled. "Something is missing," he said. "What?" she asked. Her voice was controlled. "I don't know. I keep thinking about something you said weeks ago. About the fanty concept. The fitting. The fold of 2 hands. A pause. I think Ji-eun and I are compatible. I think she's everything the list says. But I don't think we fit." She was quiet. "Is that possible?" he said. "To be compatible and not fit?" "Yes," she said. Because it was true. It was the whole basis of her methodology. It's the most common outcome for highly compatible people who are wrong for each other. What does someone do in that situation? They are honest about it, she said. And they keep looking. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Abina, I'd like to come in. Not a debrief. I want to talk about ending the engagement. She scheduled the meeting for the following Tuesday. She put the phone down. She looked at her projections. The placement fee, which she would not receive if the engagement ended without a match. Amma's supplementary coursework, which she had spent 4 evenings helping revise, and which would go to the professor next week. The gap in the scholarship. The Korean agencies. The practice. She opened the red notebook. She looked at the crossed-out lines. She looked at all the careful professional observations she had made across 17 weeks, and she understood, she had always understood since week 7, that she had been solving a case she had already solved. She had known the answer. She had been filing it in a drawer. She closed the notebook. She went to the kitchen. She made jollof rice, which was what she made when something had been decided. She ate it at the table. She called Amma and talked about the supplementary work for half an hour, and did not mention anything else. She went to bed, and she slept properly for the first time in 6 weeks. On Tuesday, she was going to tell him something true. She was not yet certain what form the true thing would take. But she was going to say it. She had been filing things in drawers for 6 weeks, and the drawers were full. He arrived on Tuesday at 2. He was in his jacket and carrying the small black notebook. He always carried it, even now, even though he no longer used it the way he had used it in week 1. He sat across from her desk. She had the red notebook in front of her. The red notebook was closed. She told him about his ex-wife first. She had been holding this since week 11, when she had found it in updated background research. A referral network contact had mentioned, in passing, that Ji-won's ex was engaged to someone she had been seeing before the marriage ended. She told him this plainly, with the precision she brought to all information that mattered. Here is what happened. Here is what it means for the wound you have been carrying. Here is why the accounting you have been doing for 2 years needs to be revised. He listened without moving. When she finished, he said, "How long have you known?" "Several weeks." "Why did you wait?" "Because you needed to have arrived somewhere with your own understanding first. If I told you too early, you would have used it as an exit from the work. You weren't ready to receive it as information rather than absolution." He was quiet. Then he said, "That's very precise knowledge of how I process things. I've been paying attention for 4 months." A pause. He looked at his hands. Then he looked at her. "All right," he said. "I want to end the engagement. Not because the work wasn't excellent. It was. But I think," he stopped. He looked at the red notebook on the desk between them. "I think the problem I brought you might not be the problem you've been solving." She held very still. "I came here," he said, "because 3 Korean matchmakers found me compatible women and I didn't fit any of them. You have an entirely different methodology. You understand the difference between compatible and fitting. You have been finding me women who get closer than anyone before. Ji-eun is the closest, and I still don't." He stopped again. "There's still something missing." She looked at the red notebook. She had known this. She had known it since week 7. She had filled the drawers with the knowing. She said, "The list you gave me in week 3. The qualities that kept being almost right, but not quite." "Yes." She opened the red notebook. She turned it around and pushed it across the desk toward him. She pointed to the entry from week 3. "Read that," she said. He read it. His face was still. She said, "That has been in there since week 3. Every introduction since has been, I have been finding women who have pieces of what I wrote there. Pieces of what you described. I have known for some time where the complete version of it lives." He looked up from the notebook. She watched him process it. She watched him read the language she had used. She had used clinical language, professional language, and she watched him understand it the way someone understands a thing in professional language. Correctly at a distance, with the interpretation that the professional distance was the whole message. "There's a conflict of interest," he said. His voice was careful, controlled. "I understand. This is you were professional to flag it. Exceptionally professional." He closed the red notebook. He pushed it back across the desk. He straightened. "You've done excellent work, Abina. I'm grateful for what this engagement produced, even if the match was not completed." He picked up the black notebook. He stood. He extended his hand. "Thank you," he said. "I mean that. I'll find another matchmaker. I think I know much better what I'm looking for now." She looked at his extended hand. He understood it as professional ethics. He understood her as a matchmaker who had identified a conflict of interest and was disclosing it correctly and closing the case appropriately. He had heard her say the true thing and understood it as a technicality. He was going to shake her hand and walk out of the office and find another matchmaker and go through the process again, and she would close the file and stand at the back of the wedding in something appropriate. She had one more chance. She could let him leave. She could accept the handshake and the professional commendation and the closed file. The practice would be intact. The reputation would be intact. Amma's fees would be manageable. Everything she had built would be exactly where she had built it. She looked at his hand. She said, "That's not what I meant." He stopped. He looked at her. "I didn't say it correctly," she said. "Let me say it correctly." He sat back down. He set the black notebook on the desk. He folded his hands. He gave her his full attention. The specific quality of it she had watched across 4 months, and across 12 introduction tables, and across every session where something mattered enough for him to be completely, entirely there. She was the person his attention landed on. She had always been. She had been filing this in drawers for 6 weeks. "The list describes me," she said. "Not because I curated it or influenced it. Because you spent 4 months talking to me, and your language started reflecting what you had been experiencing in these sessions. You were describing the fitting without knowing you were describing it. You have been describing me." A breath. She held the desk the same way he held the edge of the table during hard questions, with the grip of someone who has found something worth staying near. "I have known this since week 7. I have been bringing you women with pieces of it because I do not believe." She stopped. She said it without the softening. "Because I am in love with you, and I have been for 6 weeks, and I did not believe I was someone love worked for. My mother matched herself once. She gave up the practice." He left. "I built the practice on the rule that this does not happen to me. And I have been sitting across from you for 4 months being the answer to the question I was hired to solve. And I arranged 12 women to stand between me and that fact because I thought the rule was sufficient protection." She stopped. He was looking at her. "You were going to shake my hand," she said. "Yes," he said. "I needed you to know the difference between what I said the first time and what I just said." He looked at her for a long moment. She could not read his face, which was unusual. She had been reading him for 4 months, and she had gotten very good at it, and she could not read him now, which was the specific exposure of a woman who has said the unsoftened thing and is waiting with no cover. "Says who?" he said. She blinked. "Says who?" he said again. Quietly, not rhetorically, as a genuine challenge to the premise. "That you are not someone love works for." "Who decided that?" She opened her mouth. She closed it. She looked at the framed quote on the wall in Chui. "The woman who knows everyone's heart has no time to know her own." She had put that on her wall as a rule. She understood now, for the first time, what her mother had actually meant by it. "I decided it," she said. "And now?" She looked at him, at his precise hands folded on the desk, at his face, which she had spent 4 months learning and could not currently read because he had removed the professional register entirely, and she was seeing something underneath it she had not prepared for. She had spent 4 years being exceptionally good at knowing what everyone else needed. She had not, until this moment, known what she needed. She said, "I need someone who tells me when I'm wrong." Something crossed his face. The specific precursor, not quite a smile yet, but the moment before it. "I've been doing that for 4 months, he said. "I know," she said. "I've been writing it down." He looked at the red notebook between them. Then at her. "Close the file," he said. "Not the professional one. The other one. The one in the drawer." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached across the desk and she picked up the red notebook and she held it for a moment. The weight of 47 cases and 23 weddings and 4 years of standing at the back in something appropriate. And she set it on the shelf behind her instead of the desk between them. "Closed," she said. He smiled. Not the controlled version. The actual one, the one that changed his face entirely. The one she had never seen in 4 months of professional sessions, and was now seeing for the first time, and which landed in her chest in a way that she did not have clinical language for, and was no longer going to try to find. "Coffee," he said. "Tomorrow." "Not professional." "Not professional," she agreed. 8 o'clock. The cafe on Yonhui-dong. "I know where it is," she said. "I suggested it to you in week 4 for a client meeting because it's quiet enough to have a real conversation." "I remember," he said. "I thought at the time that you were very good at knowing what people needed." "I am," she said. "Yes," he said. "You are." He picked up the black notebook from the desk. He stood. He looked at her one more time with the full attention she had been the recipient of for 4 months, and which was different now that the professional register was gone. It was the same quality, just aimed differently, like the same light through a different window. He left. She sat in the office for exactly 12 minutes. Then she called Amma. "ESI." Amma said immediately. "What happened?" "Something happened," she said. "The client." "Yes." "ESI." Amma said, with the patience of a younger sister who has been waiting for this for some time. Are you okay? I said the hard version, Abina said. I said the unsoftened version. I said the one without the professional distance. And he said, says who? A pause. And I didn't have an answer. Amma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, ESI. The quote on your wall. I know, Abina said. I understood it differently today. The woman who knows everyone's heart has no time to know her own, Amma said. Mama didn't mean, therefore do not know your own. She meant, make the time. I know, Abina said again. I know. I'm making it. Tomorrow morning. 8 o'clock. Good, Amma said. And then, with the specific warmth of a younger sister who has been watching her older sister be exceptional at everything except this. I love you, ESI. I love you, Abina said. Submit the supplementary work by Friday. I checked it last week. It's good. I know, Amma said. Go make jollof rice. She went and made jollof rice. She ate it at the kitchen table. She looked at the wall of her apartment, no framed quote here, just the specific warmth of a space that was hers. And she thought about her mother in Accra, and the practice that was dismantled, and the rule she had carried for 4 years, and the small revision she was making to it right now without fanfare. She was not her mother. She was walking toward the practice and not away from it. That was the difference. That was the whole difference. The cafe on Yeonhuidong had been in the neighborhood long enough to have an identity. Worn wooden counters, the specific smell of ground coffee and old paper, natural light through large windows. She arrived first. This was deliberate. She always arrived first to any meeting because she preferred to be reading the room when the other person entered. She ordered coffee. She sat at the corner table. She did not open her phone or her notebook. She sat with her hands in her lap, and she thought about what she had said the day before, and she thought about the fact that she had said it, and there was nothing now between her and the consequences of having said it. He arrived at 8 exactly. He came to the corner table without looking around the room first, which meant he had arrived before 8 and waited in order to see her when he entered, which she filed precisely as the information it was. He sat across from her. There was no notebook on the table between them. No professional prop. Just the table and the coffee the server brought, and the specific quality of a Wednesday morning in Seoul. Yesterday, he said. Yes, she said. I've been thinking about it since I left your office. So have I. You said you didn't believe you were someone love worked for. He looked at his coffee. He was precise. He assembled the thought before he delivered it. I want to be honest about something. I also didn't believe for a long time that I was someone love worked for. My ex-wife told me I was unreachable. I spent 2 years rebuilding myself on the assumption that she was right. And then you told me last week that what she said was true, but it was not the complete truth. That she was already leaving before she said it. Yes, Abina said. The incomplete truth became the total explanation, he said. I carried it as the whole thing. And I built the list and the notebooks and the 4 months of introductions on the basis of a story about myself that was partially accurate and partly projection. What she needed to believe about why she was leaving. She looked at him. I'm saying, he said, that I know what it costs to carry a story about yourself that isn't the complete truth. And I think you have been carrying one. He met her eyes. The rule is not a complete truth. It's one data point, your mother's specific experience, and you've been using it as a total explanation of whether love works for you. I know, she said. I understood that yesterday. When you said, says who? I want to be clear that I'm not arguing against the rule on abstract grounds, he said. I have my own version of the rule. I came to you with a black notebook full of requirements because I was trying to protect myself from another failure by being thorough enough. As if thoroughness is sufficient protection. A pause. It isn't. You've been teaching me that for 4 months. No, she said. Thoroughness is not sufficient protection. But neither is the rule. No, he agreed. Neither is the rule. They sat with that for a moment. Outside, Seoul moved through its Wednesday. A man walked past with a child on his shoulders. A delivery scooter navigated the narrow street with aggressive calm. I want to ask you something, he said. Ask. The Fandy concept. The fitting. The fold of 2 hands where no piece is the same but the fold is whole. He looked at her. By that methodology, not the Korean compatibility framework, not any other system. By your methodology, the one you built your practice on. Are we a fitting? She had run this. She had run it properly with her full methodology applied in the 2 weeks before Tuesday's meeting. She had run it the way she ran every case, going through all the dimensions, applying the criteria, assessing both sides. She had known the result before she walked into the office on Tuesday. She had known it for 6 weeks, which was why she had been making Contemeyer stew. Yes, she said. By every measure I use. We're a fitting. He was quiet. Then, and you have 47 cases of evidence about what a fitting looks like when it holds. And what it looks like when it doesn't. What does it look like when it doesn't? When the conditions aren't right. When one or both people are not ready. When there is a factor, she paused. A rule, for instance, that prevents the fitting from being honored. And now, he said. She looked at her coffee. She thought about her mother. Not the version of the story that was the warning. The version that was the whole truth. Her mother had matched herself and been wrong not about the fitting but about the man. The man had not been someone who stayed. The practice had been dismantled not because love and work were incompatible. That was the story Abina had told herself. The practice had been dismantled because her mother had believed she needed to choose, and she had chosen wrong in both directions. Wrong man, wrong sacrifice. She was not her mother. She was walking toward the practice, and not away from it. She was sitting in a cafe on Yeonhwi-dong, and the practice was intact, and would remain intact, and Amma's supplementary work was going to the professor on Friday, and she had made jollof rice last night instead of Contemeyer stew. Now, she said, the conditions are right. He reached across the table. He put his hand over hers, not grasping, not claiming, just placed, warm, certain. I have been thorough for 4 months, he said. I have done all the research. I have the data. I know the answer. You're still treating this like a project, she said. Occupational failure, he said. Tell me when I do it, and I'll try again. She looked at their hands on the table. She turned hers over and held his. No, she said. Sometimes the thorough approach arrives at the right answer. I have the same failure. I ran the assessment. I had the result in week 7. I put it in a drawer for 6 weeks instead of acting on it. She looked up at him. We are both, apparently, people who know the answer and take a long time to say it out loud. Yes, he said. We are. And then the precursor. Not quite the smile yet, just before it. Compatible in our failures. And fitting in everything else. He smiled. The actual one. She felt it land in her chest, and she did not reach for the clinical language because she no longer had any use for it. She held his hand in the Yeonhwi-dong cafe, and she thought about her grandmother in Cape Coast who had taught her mother about the fold of 2 hands, each piece different, the fold whole. She thought about the framed quote on the wall of the office. She thought about the small revision she was going to make to it. Tomorrow, he said. Yes, she said. And the day after. Yes. I should tell you, he said, that I intend to be thorough about this. I know, she said. I am counting on it. 3 weeks later. A Friday evening. Her apartment. She had cooked kelaweel, plantains, ginger, cloves, the warm smell of something that meant in her body. Company that is welcome. The apartment was small and entirely hers, full of books and the specific evidence of someone who had been living purposefully alone and was now, with her full knowledge, and after running the assessment and closing the file and opening the drawer, doing something different. He arrived at 7. He brought wine and said nothing about the smell from the corridor, which was warm and specific and Ghanaian and entirely hers. This was something she noted, not the bringing of wine, which was standard, but the not commenting on the smell. He had been in her office 4 months. He had never once tried to interpret or categorize or understand anything about Accra or Cape Coast or the Fanti grandmother's concept. He had simply received it as part of what she was, the origin of her methodology, the thing that made her way of seeing different from the Korean agencies, the source of what she had built. He had received it as information without making it an occasion for display. She had noted this from the first intake session and filed it under not yet relevant. It was relevant now. They ate at the kitchen table. He asked about her week. She told him about a case, not the details, just the shape, 2 people who fitted on every dimension except one, and the specific puzzle of what to do with the one. He thought about it. He offered something precise and unexpected, a reframe she had not considered, and she looked at him across the kelaweel and thought. He does this. He finds the angle I haven't looked from. This is what he does. This is what the list was trying to name. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. She pushed it across the table. It was a small square of Kent fabric, gold and black, the pattern her grandmother in Cape Coast used to say meant a chief's path, which was not an easy path but a dignified one. She had been carrying it in her wallet since she was 22, since she came to Seoul for the first time with her graduate school acceptance letter and her mother's voice on the phone saying, "Take something of ours with you." "I carry this," she said. "When I'm somewhere I need to remember where I came from. I haven't. I don't show it to people. But I wanted you to know it exists." He picked it up. He held it carefully, The way he held everything he had decided mattered. He looked at it. He said, "Tell me about the pattern." She told him about the Kent. About Cape Coast. About the grandmother who had taught her mother the fold of two hands. She told him about the specific fancy phrase for a fitting. The word that was not the same as compatible, that meant something older and more precise. And she told him what it felt like to grow up knowing that some people looked for the right partner, and some people looked for the fitting, and only one of those was what she was trained to find. He listened with his full attention, the kind that was not waiting to respond but actually receiving, and when she finished he said, "Is that word? Can I learn it?" She said it. He repeated it back with careful pronunciation. She corrected it slightly. He tried again. "Better." She said, "You'll get it." "I intend to," he said. She looked at him across the table, this precise and difficult and fully present man, and she felt the specific settled quality of something arriving in the right order. She had run the assessment. She knew what held. She was not uncertain. Later, when the Kellawheel was finished and the wine was finished, and the conversation had gone to places that had nothing to do with matchmaking or methodology, and everything to do with two people learning each other's texture, he came around the table. He stood beside her chair. He reached down and held out his hand. She took it. She stood up. She was at his shoulder. He was taller than she had spent any time thinking about directly, which was not accurate. She had thought about it directly and filed it under not relevant. That file was now closed. He kissed her with the thoroughness she had been counting on. Not rushed, thorough, which in his particular execution meant complete attention applied entirely to what mattered, with no portion of himself somewhere else. She had observed this quality across 4 months, and confirmed it now with the empirical precision of someone who had been right about this in advance. She had been right. She was frequently right. She was going to stop being surprised by this. She put her arms around him and he held her close with the specific warmth of someone who had arrived somewhere after a long time and intended to stay, and she felt in her chest and elsewhere the satisfaction of the fold. 2 pieces different, the fold whole. He was thorough. He applied to this the same complete attention he gave to everything he had decided mattered. Mapping her carefully, responding to her responses, learning her with the specific focused patience of someone who had spent 4 months understanding that thoroughness, applied well, was a form of love. She said his name. He said hers back, differently than he had said it in the office, with the warmth in it that names carry when they mean you, specifically. "I am here with you, specifically." She pulled him close. She let herself be entirely present, which she had not been in some time. Present in the specific way of a woman who had spent 4 years in other people's love stories and had finally, making time, walked into her own. Later, in the dark apartment with the November cold outside and the warmth inside, she lay with his arm around her and listened to his breathing slow toward sleep. She lay with her eyes open for a moment. She thought about her mother's quote. She thought about the small revision. She thought about the 47 couples and the 23 weddings and the back of rooms. She thought about Amma's supplementary work, which was with the professor now, which was going to be fine. She thought about the fold of 2 hands. She thought, "I am making time. I have been making time since Tuesday. This is what making time looks like." She closed her eyes. She slept. 2 years later. The book was published in March. The full title in Korean and English was The Compatibility Methodology, 47 Matches for Principles and 1 Mistake. The subtitle was her editor's idea. She had objected to the word mistake on the grounds that she preferred precision about what had actually occurred. A correct identification, improperly filed for 6 weeks, and then retrieved and used. The editor pointed out that one correctly identified result that was improperly filed for 6 weeks due to a rule inherited from an insufficient dataset was not a subtitle anyone would remember. She accepted mistake because she was precise, not stubborn. Chapter 12 was called On Why the Matchmaker Sometimes Matches Herself Last. She had been told it was the most discussed chapter in the book. She believed this because she had built the whole book around the question the chapter answered. What is the difference between compatible and fitting, and why does the matchmaker, of all people, with all the methodology at her disposal, fail to apply it to herself? The answer, as she had written it in Chapter 12, was this. The matchmaker is so good at seeing what everyone else needs that she has systematically convinced herself she is exempt from the category. She has attended 23 weddings. She has read love in other people's bodies for years. She has never turned the methodology on herself because to do so would require acknowledging that she has a shape that requires completing, and acknowledging that requires also acknowledging who might complete it, and that is the fact she has been filing in a drawer. The corrective she proposed in the final paragraph of Chapter 12 was not the abolition of the rule. It was an amendment. The matchmaker does not match herself carelessly. The matchmaker does not allow the rule to become an exemption from the assessment. The matchmaker runs the assessment. The matchmaker trusts the methodology she built her practice on. The matchmaker makes the time. On the dedication page, the Chui quote was slightly changed. The original, "The woman who knows everyone's heart has no time to know her own," was printed in full, attributed to her mother. Below it, in Abina's handwriting, was the amendment, "Make the time." Sarpong and associates had expanded. 2 associates, both trained in the fitting methodology, both more careful than the Korean agencies about the difference between compatible and whole. She matched fewer couples herself now. The ones she matched with the same precision as always. The red notebook had a successor, a better system, more structured, with separate columns for the things she had previously been collapsing together. Amma had graduated with distinction. The supplementary coursework had been submitted on time and assessed at distinction level, which raised her grade to a B+, which was above the reinstated threshold. Amma was now doing her master's in Accra. She had called after the book launched to say, "ESI Chapter 12. She had not elaborated. She had not needed to. Ji-won came to the book launch. He stood at the back because he knew she would be working the room and needed him not to be part of the professional performance of the evening. He understood this the way he had come to understand most things about her, with his full attention applied to what she actually needed rather than what he thought she should need. She had been teaching him this since week 1. He had been an excellent student. When the guests had gone and she was signing the last copies at the table, he came and sat across from her. He set his small black notebook on the table. He still kept it, not for introductions but for things he wanted to remember. She had looked inside it once, at his permission. It contained, among other things, a phonetic transcription of the Fanti word for fitting, with pronunciation notes, and a small sketch of 2 hands folded together. "Chapter 12, he said. "Yes. The best chapter. Possibly. Abina. Her name, with its weight. You found 47 people their person. You spent 4 months finding mine. I know how this goes," she said. "I wrote it. Literally. Chapter 12, 3rd paragraph. I would like," he said, "to spend the rest of my life finding every possible way to prove you didn't have to look that far." She looked at him across the launch table. She thought about the intake meeting, the black notebook, the 3 Korean matchmakers who had found him compatible women, and not the fitting. She thought about 12 introductions, and the drawer, and the Kontemeyer stew at 9 p.m. She thought about the cafe on Yeonhui-dong, and the second time she said the true thing, and the way he had said. "Says who?" "You've been saying that," she said, "in various forms for 2 years. I intend to keep saying it," he said, "for considerably longer." She capped her pen. She looked at him. "I think," she said, "that you might be the best match I've ever made." "I'm case number 48, he said. "Yes. And unlike the other 47, I had the result in week 7 and filed it in a drawer for 6 weeks. She picked up the red notebook. She set it on the shelf beside her. "The methodology holds." "I checked." "Of course you checked," he said. "I'm thorough," she said. "I know," he said. "That's why I hired you." She stood. She came around the table. He stood too. She put her hand in his, and he held it with the same certainty he had held it the first time, in the cafe, the morning after she said the hard version. Certain and careful, and like something that mattered. "Come home," she said. "I'm already here," he said. She let him hold the door for her. They walked out into the Seoul March night, still cold, but with the specific quality of cold that knows spring is just behind it. And she thought about the Kent Square in her wallet, gold and black, the chief's path, and the grandmother in Cape Coast who had taught her mother about the fold. She thought about the 48 couples, and the wedding she was going to attend from the front row. She thought about the Fanti word for fitting that he had learned, and was still refining, that he practiced on her sometimes in the evenings when he thought it would make her laugh. It always did. She held his hand in the Seoul night, and she was, entirely and without qualification, exactly where the assessment said she would be. The fold was whole. "Welcome back, besties. Take a breath. What you just watched was the smartest woman in the room say the true thing twice. The first time she said it in professional language. The list describes me, there is a conflict of interest, I am disclosing it correctly." And he understood it as ethics and stood to shake her hand and leave. And she let him pick up the notebook. And she watched him prepare to walk out. And then she said, "That's not what I meant." She had to say it again. Harder. Without the softening. Without the professional distance between her and the exposure of it. She had to say, I am in love with you. I have been for 6 weeks. I arranged 12 women because I did not believe I was someone love worked for. And he said, says who? Besties, that is the question. Says who? Who decided? Who decided that you are not someone love works for? Who decided that you are the person who holds other people's hands at the altar and stands at the back and goes home to an empty apartment? Who decided that the capacity you have for seeing what everyone else needs means you are exempt from needing it yourself? Says who? Before I let you go, 3 things. First, which moment do you carry? The first version, the second version, the says who, the Kent Square, the fold of 2 hands. Tell me in the comments. Second, share this story with the person you know who has been matching other people and standing at the back and going home alone. You know who it is. Tell them Abina said, make the time. Third, subscribe, ring the bell, stay with us, because the next story is ready and it is going to find you exactly where you are. This is Afro K Dark Diaries TV. The fold is whole. I'll see you in the next one.